J'ai précisé ce que je disais. J'ai d'abord écrit 3 pages pour lui dire. Ensuite, j'ai écrit 6 pages pour lui dire la même chose.
The first time I saw Je suis ELLE was probably in the early 90s, and to be honest, in a way went over my head. It didn't affect me the way it did the second time I saw the film, which was 10 years ago, so around 2009. I run a film series called Queer Art Film. It's a series which we've done for 11 years where we pick the artist, and then the artist picks a film which has inspired them as a queer person, as a New Yorker, as a creative person. And one of our first artists that we invited to show a film was Sarah Schulman, the novelist, essayist, activist. And she chose Je suis ELLE. So there was a screening at the old 92nd Street Y Tribeca with myself and probably 15 other people. And I fell into the film in a really different way. And I've sort of never forgotten the film since that moment. Like, it's a mythical film for me. And it's a canonical film in terms of my own sense of what I need to be inspired to make my own work and to understand people.
Sauter, danser, embrasser qui vous voudrez.
I think the bravery of the film meant something so different to me at that point. The first time I was just watching someone else, and I feel like the second time I watched it, I was watching, in a strange way, myself as an artist, as a gay person, as someone who had really dealt personally with the idea of being transparent in my own life. Chantal Akerman was living in New York in the time. She kind of grew up at the Anthology Film Archive, and she's watching Alice Frampton, and she's watching Michael Snow, and she's seeing Yvonne Rainer, and she wants to be a part of it, and so she speaks directly in that language. Cinema was connected to poetry, to painting, to performance art, to downtown New York. All those things were of a piece. And I think for Chantal, the Anthology Film Archives and Jonas Mekas as a curator and as a filmmaker was very central. These films were often diaristic in fashion. They were seeing cinema as a two-dimensional object. So there was the idea of the frame as it could be an extended painting or image. They were location-based films. They were duration-based films. So often they were asking for close attention to space and sound. Chantal Akerman made the film in 1973. It was released in 1974. She was 23 years old. She is the star of the film. At the end of the movie, she's named Julie. So there is a sense that it's both an autobiography and a fiction. The film is structured in 3 different parts. The first part is a woman alone in a room, considering what had recently happened in the room and some sort of relationship that she has that is over or past, but you don't know who the subjects are.
J'ai encore attendu que cela passe ou qu'il arrive quelque chose. Que je crois en Dieu ou que tu m'envoies une paire de gants pour sortir dans le froid.
There's a voiceover in which she describes the actions that you observe in the past tense. And those actions are moving things around in her apartment, eating from a bag of sugar, watching or observing nature, hearing some children, and maybe a playground nearby. It's like a dance piece.
Puis, un jour, il a cessé de neiger. Puis peu après, la neige a fondu et je me suis levée.
There's this very interesting disconnect between her voice and the images we're watching. But it gives the film what I consider a confessional quality. There is a way in which she's speaking to us as if we are her analyst or her priest or her rabbi or her lover. She doesn't leave the apartment in the first section, which is said to be 28 days. There is a kind of boxed-in nature. On the other hand, the shot is so wide. You're always seeing full body. So to me, there's also a lot of space in that room. It's a playground. It's a place of isolation, but it's also a place of freedom. I don't actually know Akerman's relationship to therapy or analysis, but analysis was very big post the war and in the 60s, and there was an idea of close study. And I think that is something that the films have and ask for And this is not to say that there's not extraordinary pleasure and visual pleasure. Like, they're not academic films. They're super emotional films. And I think Akerman understood that you go into a meditative state in her work that allows you to wander, but also to be precisely attentive to the everyday. The second section becomes a bit of a road movie. She meets a truck driver. She's hitchhiking. They have a meal together. They listen to music. Watching that scene when she's eating a meal with this man that she met and she's not saying anything and he's not saying anything, I felt an identification remembering myself as a young person. She's 23 years old and she doesn't know how to navigate emotional relationships and she doesn't know how to reveal herself to this man. Eventually, there's a sexual act between the two of them.
Tu vois, c'est ça qui est important.
Which includes a very long and significant monologue by the truck driver describing his own life and his own marriage, his ideas and thoughts about being a father. And Akerman is interestingly present and absent in that relationship.
Tu vois, de temps en temps, comme ça, je prends des filles sur la route. Seulement, je sais qu'il n'y a pas de lendemain, il n'y a rien. C'est comme ça, c'est maintenant.
But throughout that, you really do sense her empathy with his loneliness. She's a humanist, and she's interested in how hard it is to be alive.
Je veux pas que tu restes, tu sais.
The third section, she arrives at an apartment. It's clearly the home of a female lover of hers who rebuffs her. You hear Akerman saying her first line of spoken dialogue, which is, "I'm hungry." With that, the woman invites her in. There's a small seduction between the two of them, and the film concludes with the two of them making love, having sex in a very white room, in a very open way. You see the first smile and the first laugh of the character of Julie, which I think is significant. You could call this a gay rights film, right? It's a film that says there's a chance that you'll have a better life with a woman, if you're a woman, than with the men that you meet in the truck. The transparency that the film has in terms of sex and sexuality is wonderful, and it's a beacon for me in terms of what is possible in my own work. I made a film called Keep the Lights On, and there's a shot which is not dissimilar to the last scene between the two women in Je tu ELLE. Camera still, the bodies are the bodies, the intimacy is the intimacy, the lights are on. That's something which I can go back to every day and get energized by because it's possible and it's brave. It's truly personal cinema. Her career was in conversation with the history of art, the history of cinema, this history of patriarchal and maternal culture. She created work which allowed us to be privy to that conversation.
Sautez, dansez, embrassez qui vous voudrez. Nous n'irons plus au bois, les lauriers sont coupés, la belle que voilà les aura ramassés. Entrez dans la danse, voyez comme on danse.